Morning, welcome to Mississippi Board of Nursing. As we begin our board meeting for today, before we begin, I'm going to ask Mr. Drew Calhoun to lead us in prayer.
Lord, thank you for today. Lord, I pray over these proceedings that you would give us wisdom just to make the decisions that would keep the consumers and people of Mississippi safe, Lord. We pray that everything we say and do would glorify your name. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
So as we begin, we need to declare a quorum. So we're going to go from left to right. If you will announce your name so that we can do a roll call, beginning with you, Mr. Castillo.
Vito Castillo.
Janelle Moody,
Carly Walker,
Drew Calhoun.
TJ Adams.
Lacey Gentry,
Sandra Culpepper.
Jamie Clanton,
Mary Stewart,
Beverly Oliver,
Nancy Norris Johnson.
At this time, we have a declaration of a quorum here today. So with that, would anyone like to make a motion to request for approval of the agenda today?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as read.
I'll second.
All those in favor? All right, thank you. At this point, we're going to go into the open forum. At this point, anyone from the public that would like to speak, which I do have 3 people that have requested to speak. That is Christy Davis, and I want to pronounce this right, Dejanet Price, and Miss Jennifer Patty. We do ask that you limit your time to 3 minutes for your discussion. So at this time, I would like Miss Davis to step forward.
Morning.
Practitioner in the endocrinology clinic. I also lead advocacy for the Mississippi Obesity Society. Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that. At the last meeting, I was able to catch one of y'all said something that really caught me, and I thought, this is the statement. This is why y'all are here. And I think it was you, Miss Lacey. There's a fine line between protecting the public and preventing care. And I know y'all have a big responsibility, and you do a great service to Mississippians, and I appreciate that. Thank y'all for letting me come speak. What I'm here to ask is that you strike the use of diet medication regulation from our regulations. I know the Mississippi Obesity Society, M&A, and MANP have sent letters asking for this or to update the regulation. It's causing issues with our patients. It's preventing care. It's not consistent with current understanding of obesity as a chronic disease or current clinical practice guidelines. There's a 40% or more obesity rate in Mississippi right now. I don't think that's shocking to anyone. It's expected to be over 66% by 2030. We need to remove these barriers to care so that we can help these patients. We know that Mississippi, we have patients that have huge socioeconomic disadvantages, racial disparities exist in obesity care and everywhere else also. With poor insurance coverage, our patients have enough hoops to jump through. They don't need any additional ones. The issues with this regulation, very frequent office visits that may not be medically necessary or feasible for our patients. Think about the extra co-pays, travel expenses, and the time off work. If our patients are only able to take, say, Phentermine because their insurance will not cover anything else, they have to be off once a month, come to my clinic, wait, and that's time away from their families, from their work. It's hard to do that. If they can't afford to do that, then we lose continuity of care. We lose all the ground we've gained. If you think about Adderall, which is a stimulant also, we're able to do 3 months at a time for those patients. But for Phentermine, they can only have 30 days. If we know that obesity is a long-term disease, a chronic disease that we're going to be treating long-term, appointments every 30 days does not make sense for these patients. Another example is Qsymia. This is Phentermine and topiramate combination. For me to get that for my patients so they can maybe afford it, I have to do a mail order pharmacy. If we have to wait for them to come in, and it has Phentermine has part of it, so it's control. So if they have to come in every 30 days, then we have to refill the prescription, send it off to a mail order pharmacy, wait on that to get to them. We have very poor continuity of care there also. We could, excuse me, we could prescribe the Phentermine and the topiramate components separately, but there's no off-label prescribing for obesity medication in Mississippi. There are no other regulations about off-label prescribing, to the best of my knowledge, other than for obesity. If we think about our patients that have Medicaid, which does cover anti-obesity medication, I learned this last year, it only covers 16 visits a year. So if we're eating up 4 to 12 visits a year just with weight management, there's no time for those other chronic diseases.
Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
time has elapsed.
Okay.
Was there anything you'd like?
I would like to ask for this to be removed. If the concern is that we would run wild, that's what Mr. Floyd Wiley's for. I'm sure he'd be glad to pay a visit to their clinic if someone's doing something abnormal. If I had to say anything that would take the place of that, maybe a position statement that would ask that we document the clinical practice guidelines that we're going by if we are doing something that's not FDA approved. Is there any questions? Thank y'all for your time.
At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Trice. Ms. Trice, just once again, you have 3 minutes.
Okay,
You may begin.
thank you. So I'm DeJarnette Trice. I'm with Walker Legal and Business Consulting. I'm an attorney by trade, helping healthcare clinicians in this space. One of the things that I do is I help nurse practitioners establish clinics and make sure that we develop a compliance program as well. So I'm here today to advocate not only for the nurse practitioners, but also for the patients as well. And I know clinicians will provide evidence as it relates to how it impacts their practice, but I also want to talk about how it impacts business. So I live in Tupelo, Mississippi. So Memphis is only about an hour and a half drive, 100 miles away. So what I have been told by some of my clients is that there are a lot of barriers because in the state of Tennessee, they are able to prescribe this compounded semaglutide. And because they are, what they're finding is their patients want it and they're interested in crossing those borders. So patients are either, on a weekly or a monthly basis traveling to Tennessee in order to get this care. Now, what happens is then the nurse practitioner, because they've established a relationship and they want their primary care for the most part, whether that's weight management, otherwise to be with the nurse practitioner. Now these nurse practitioners are establishing clinics in other states as well, so they can provide this. Now, when I first saw this trend in my practice, I thought it was because, okay, we're expanding, your practice in not only Mississippi and Tennessee as well. But what I found is, and I was surprised by this, they're like, no, 80% of my patients in Tennessee are Mississippi residents. We're only doing this because they've asked us. And what we do know is that, people are going to do whatever they want to do. So either we provide a safe space for them to do that, or they'll find other avenues, whether that's traveling across state lines or whether that is, searching for online pharmacies and things of that nature. So I think that it is to the benefit as we think about what are the benefits versus the risk of allowing them to prescribe this compounded semaglutide. I think that the benefits far exceed, especially if we put into place something similar to what the Mississippi Board of Medical Licensure has done for the physicians, so that we can ensure that they are providing or receiving this medication from a reputable pharmacy that has a focus on quality.
Thank you, Ms. Trice. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Trice. Next we have on Zoom is Ms. Jennifer Patty. Ms. Patty, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can, and as a reminder, you have 3 minutes. And you may-
Okay. My name is Jennifer Patty. I'm a practicing nurse practitioner in Hattiesburg, Mississippi at a busy family medicine clinic. I feel like this is really the perfect time for me to come in with my request, as it is also regarding the compounded versions of these weight loss medications. We currently are not prescribing them because we follow the rules that you guys have in place. They were prescribed previously by some doctors in our clinic. And while they were prescribed before new regulations were put out, we saw improvement not only in weight, but we saw improvement in hypertension, A1Cs, lipid panels, overall metabolic panels. We saw patients improving in their anxiety and depression because they were up, they were moving. They were living a life that they haven't previously lived. Then when we stopped prescribing, all of this backtracked. And I understand that it was because of the safety of the salts that were deemed unsafe for human use in the compound. So I decided to do my own research, and I found a pharmacy in Texas that compounds with only FDA-approved ingredients. They have potency, sterility reports, and certificate of analysis reports. I asked that they email me all of that so I could review it before I presented it to you guys. And I got just that. And I thought it could be considered for us to be able to offer this to patients, because I think whatever goes in a compound, if it goes in FDA approved, why wouldn't it come out FDA approved? They do not use salts, and they are deemed safe. And I thought this would be an excellent avenue for nurse practitioners to be able to explore for their patients who cannot afford these brand name medicines or lack insurance coverage, and it could only help their overall health needs.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. Does anyone from the board have
Thank
any
you.
questions for Ms. Patty? Thank you, Ms. Patty. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, moving on from that. I see Ms. Malone is here today. Would you like to give an update, Ms. Malone?
Thank you.
Yes.
So thank you, Ms. Malone.
And I see,
Ms. Temple, you're on the line, hearing updates from you guys.
Good morning. No, thank you. I don't have an update today.
Okay, so moving on from this, we're going to go into the legislative update with Mr. Bobinger. But before we go in to letting Mr. Bobinger speak, I would like to bring forth to the board that we would like to develop a legislative committee. And with that legislative committee, the purpose of the Mississippi Board of Nursing Legislative Committee is to monitor, analyze, and respond to legislative matters that impact the nursing regulatory environment in Mississippi. We've had the privilege of establishing with Mr. Trey Bobinger as our liaison. And do you have any input on that, Mr. Bobinger?
Yes, I would, Madam President. I think forming a legislative committee as part of this board or a subset is a really good idea. I think it allows us to focus more on those issues, hopefully from a strategic standpoint, planning more time in advance at looking at issues. So I think it's an excellent idea. And if you ask me my opinion, I would certainly recommend that this board adopt that committee.
Does anyone have any questions about that?
I have a question. So are we talking, you said this, I just want to affirm, we would be talking about a committee that would look specifically, or we would focus on regulatory
Well,
law and policies, not necessarily practice and professional kinds of issues.
So with that being said, when we talked about it, what we were looking at is the monitorization, analyzing, and what is the potential for us as a regulatory body.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to discern, understand how this would differ from some other nursing groups that already are very actively engaged in the advocacy piece for the profession.
I'll be happy to answer that. First of all, we very much value our relationships with all of our professional associations and advocacy groups. In fact, I think you guys know our history's been to augment and supplement and support them. So in no way would this displace or take anything away from that. I think the point was anything impacting directly the board or the regulation of things or anything that might need legislative approval. I think that committee would look into that and study it. Now, whatever they come out with would, I assume, would have to come back before the entire board and be voted upon by the board. So it's not like this committee would, as I understand it, Madam President, the committee wouldn't do anything on its own accord without having to come back and have a vote of the entire board. So, but it would just be, we get approached about supporting this bill or opposing this bill. So this would be a way to more, I guess, a little more focus and a little more deliberative action or thought in what we take as a position for the Mississippi Board of Nursing. So that's really the purpose of it.
Is this common at other boards, Phyllis, in this
If I
country?
may, Madam President. Okay, so I appreciate Dr. Stewart's question and comment because our mission is to protect the public. And so anything we do, the mission should be first and forefront, and we should be approaching and looking at anything in the legislative arena that affects regulation. The professional associations are the advocacy groups. And as Trey said, we work, we value that partnership, but there are certain things from a regulatory standpoint, even in the legislative arena. That's why we have Mr. Bobinger there, that you have to be able to separate and not cross the line. So I think it's a good idea. I'm not aware of many other boards they have what they call a legislative affairs that is run by staff. And the staff present to the board members those issues that are pertinent, that address that mission and the regulation. So I think it's a good idea to have it. The staff already monitor legislation that's going on during the legislative session. And what we look for is anything that impacts the Board of Nursing, the regulatory arena, and the practice of the nurses from a regulatory standpoint. So that's what we do. So this would be like another tier where you would have Mr. Bobinger would be the liaison to the staff between the board members that serve on this committee. And so I think it's a good idea to have it, but just remember what the mission is.
Well, and I guess I'm well done. I guess my question is, I'm not opposed to it. I just I think we have to be careful as we're not a political body, and that could get really sticky. And so I think there's a difference in, government appointed board members and staff that go through the formal professional employment process. So I guess my question is, I hear what you're saying. I just think we need to be cautious when we're appointing board members or making that part of the committee structure for board members, that board members don't get stuck, because that could be detrimental for our advocacy groups and others. I think that's all.
And so in hearing the purpose, you say you would monitor.
Yes.
That was part of the purpose, would be to monitor. And I think as long as you just monitoring and I leave that with Trey to make sure that the guardrails are established and that he has the experience to say, oh, yeah, this is something we really need to be watching. You can bring it back to the staff. We can research and get information for you all. But if you're monitoring, that sounds a little bit better than actually taking certain actions. I'll put it that way.
It's going to be primarily a staff. I mean, in terms of the composition of the committee, is it more heavily staff or board members? More board members?
It's a committee, what we propose is a committee like what we have. Three-person committee.
So there'd be 3 board members, and how many? Okay. Thank you.
That's not for sure. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Bobinger to do his legislative update.
We vote on that?
Do you need a motion to form the committee?
We technically don't have to, but if they want to, we certainly can.
You said we don't have to, I'm sorry.
No, don't have to, but we certainly can if y'all want to vote.
I would like for us to vote.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Stewart would like to make a motion to,
Well, I'm gonna vote in opposition, so.
She does. She doesn't wanna, if she's not in favor of the committee, it wouldn't make sense for her to make the motion to form it.
so would someone like to make a motion to accept that we have a legislative committee? Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, we're gonna go by roll call. Well,
Doc.
discussion.
Yeah, I would just, before we vote, speak in favor of it. From my limited time on the board, it just seems like the mission and what we do is just fraught with a lot of, you know, interplay with regulatory issues. And I think it's actually fairly common. I know the Mississippi State Board of Public Accountancy has a legislative committee. There's Mississippi Bar
Right.
has a legislative committee. So I think it's pretty common and it's a good, I think, interface for the board to have with our legislative liaison. So I would just speak in favor of it. I think it has a lot more upside than downside.
Do any healthcare agencies, Board of Pharmacy, Board of Medicine,
I'm not familiar with
Right.
those particularly.
Trey?
I'm not familiar, whether they do or not. I don't know.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to just ask Dr. Stewart, can you kind of just simplify your?
Probably not, Drew.
Okay.
Probably cannot simplify. My brain does not work that way, but simplify my concern.
Yeah.
I think my concern is that I don't know that it's vetted. I don't know what the responsibilities of the committee are. I don't know what the preparation of the people that serve on the committee to know that they're working within their parameters. I don't think anybody would intentionally certainly fall off the, get off the side of the road per se. But I think there's a very high risk of that when you're talking politics, really. And I think we can serve in an advisory capacity as board members with a staff, perhaps committee that focuses on this as opposed to a board heavy committee looking specifically at anything legislative. It's just, I don't know that it's, and I don't know that we have any templates or models to know that it is effective.
And again, it's a committee. So as Trey said, the board is subject to the board. So, it
Right.
can't do anything on its own. The board will have to approve whatever recommendations come out of that committee.
Madam President,
Yes.
I would like to, kind of lean on Mary's comments a little. I would love to see the structure. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I would like I would personally like to ask if we could table to the next meeting. That way we could have a good structure and a better understanding and have a little more conversation.
Let me get some of the goals that we looked at.
I'm sorry, will you tell us where these are coming from? Like who did this?
Who thought of them?
Who's we the,
Executive committee.
the executive committee? Okay.
So some of the goals is, like he said, to monitor legislative developments, basically stay updated on bills and the legislative proposals that affect directly the Board of Nursing and the regulatory matters, the nursing regulatory matters in the state of Mississippi. We're going to track specific bills and we're going to report on the progress and see where those bills are and what the implications of those particular bills are, and if we need to do anything about those bills.
What was that last statement? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Okay. To track specific bills and report on their progress and any specific implications they might have on the nursing regulatory.
So does that help you any?
Yeah, I understand it a little better. I mean, would have liked to heard that on the front end instead of the back end because other than just asking for a committee. But yeah, that answers.
Any further discussion?
Could we have information from the other boards that have the committees and what their objectives are and stuff?
We could probably canvass that. I'm just aware that from the national level, the state affairs and governmental affairs is handled by the staff. So I would have to canvass the regulatory boards in Mississippi to see, as Mr. Castillo just said, there are some that may have that. But it's primarily the ones that I'm familiar with, the staff are the people that do that and they report to the board. But yeah, we can look into it if you like. If you still want to table it until we get some additional information, we'd be happy to look into that.
Any further discussion?
The motion, so
So
the motion that's on the table is to approve the establishment of a legislative committee.
do I have a second?
There is a second. There is a motion and a second.
So it's a vote. So we're gonna go by roll call. Mr. Castillo, we will begin with you. Are you for?
For
Okay, thank you.
the motion.
4.
I'd like to abstain.
Hold on, 2 seconds.
Abstain. Sandra, for.
Janie is 4.
No.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Abstain goes to. Okay, may I change my vote? To no, I would like to table it, so I guess I would like a no because I don't want to go with the majority.
I understand, but you already voted. You chose not to vote.
Okay.
Now change that, given that the result has been announced.
Oh, I didn't hear the results. I was just asking a question about the abstain.
The abstain
It goes to the majority, so I didn't hear I don't think it's been announced, has it?
I heard that they were discussing it. I thought y'all were discussing it down there, that the motion did carry 4-2 in favor of. Carly, what did Carly? 4. So I've got the count, I've got Mr. Castillo, favor, me favor, Sandra in favor, Janelle in favor, and Carly in favor. I've got opposing TJ, Mary Stewart, and I've got abstaining. I've got Andrew abstaining, Lacey, Nancy, and Beverly. So that's 4 abstaining.
So with that being said, it does carry the quorum, which will move forward. All right. Mr. Bobbinger's legislative report.
I'll just mention a few things, since the board having adopted this committee, there'll be more discussion in detail. I'm just going to hit some of the high points that most of you are already familiar with. Obviously, the issue, which is really upon our advocacy groups, professional advocacy, full practice authority. I'm sure that's something the committee will at least monitor and consider and look at as we move forward toward and into the session. Secondly, there was a bill last year that involved appointment of board members, not just to the appointment process and who was making recommendations, who was doing the appointments. I look for a bill of that nature probably coming back this session. There were a handful of agencies that ended up, the legislature made a change. They began the session with an omnibus bill with practically all the agencies, but most of those, including this one, were taken out. So we will probably see something along those lines. There's always a couple bills dealing with possible regulation of unlicensed healthcare professionals. They may be technically certified, but they're not licensed. Kind of getting into the lawyer, putting my lawyer hat on, but that, there's always a couple of those bills, and we get approached periodically, whether either to support or oppose possible regulation of certain groups or healthcare related professionals. I would caution on that too, that we always have our appropriation bill. That's a big deal. And I'd be remiss without mentioning Shan Montgomery and her good work along with our staff and putting together a really solid substantive budget. I'll also say we had a good year last year, thankfully, and I think a lot of it was preparation and we could back up what we were asking for, but thanks to the legislature for supporting our budget. But what I was going to say, when you get into that regulation, you also got to think about additional funding for personnel, for what I would call infrastructure, where you're going to house the people, those kind of basic issues kind of go hand in glove with that. But I do think, there's always some of that out there to monitor and consider what the board may want to do. Certainly, I believe there'll be more discussion about Medicaid expansion. No surprise there. As you know, that's been a hot topic, at least the last couple of sessions, and soon we'll hear more. There'll be more bills introduced in the 25 session. PERS, I don't think it'll get the attention of the last session, although I think there may be a requirement for the state to place some additional funding into PERS, more than likely. The top issue for this session will be, it's been made clear by the governor, Speaker White, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann, will be tax reform. I attended the Speaker's tax reform policy summit recently, and issues are whether or not to eliminate the state income tax, and the other deals with sales tax reduction on groceries. And that's going to be a top issue. You're going to hear a lot about that in the upcoming session. And as always, there'll be things that just appear out of left field sometimes that pop up that we have to address or deal with, or certainly evaluate, particularly as Dr. Johnson said, from a regulatory standpoint, making sure it doesn't adversely impact this board or the authority of the board. So, we monitor the public health committees very closely, and there's some other committees as well, certainly appropriations, that impact our agency. So we will continue to do that and work with the committee to make sure that the interest of the board and in this agency are properly represented. Unless anyone's got a question, that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Mr. Bobinger? Thank you, Mr. Bobinger.
Thank you.
The next thing we have is, okay, so I realized I did not address Dr. Kim Hoover with the Hospital Association.
Hi, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the Office of Nursing Workforce Report.
Good morning. I'm gonna talk while we're getting set up. Got a lot of information to give to you. First off, I'm Mitchell Adcock. I'm Executive Director for Center for Mississippi Health Policy. This is Dr. Larry Smith. He's our epidemiologist. We have been working with your staff to get data and information. Let me put you kind of at ease with the Center for Mississippi Health Policy. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We're not advocates. We're not in it for anything. Our purpose is to provide data and information to public health organizations, help them make better decisions. We work with legislatures, other Department of Health, other entities to provide data and information. Dr. Smith's gonna go in detail kind of what the survey data is. We're gonna give you the survey instrument, the Mississippi data that's pulled out of that. So we've got a lot of information to give to you. We're gonna do a really brief presentation, just about 5 minutes to tell you what's here, leave it with you, let you look at it. And then whenever you get through and you have questions, we'll walk with your staff and try to get those questions answered. So that, I'm going to hand it out as Dr. Smith, he'll describe what the instrument is and kind of what the data is, as I hand this out, if that's okay.
Good morning. This survey that I use for the analysis is the National Sample Survey of Registered Nurses, and it is administered every 2 years by the Department of Health and Human Services of the U.S. government, and the Census Bureau administrates it. And it covers nurse workforce data, and it is concentrated in licensure, education, employment, leave of primary nurses, why they remain in primary nurse and secondary employment, nurse practitioners, and there's just a wide variety of different areas that it covers. The sample is administered throughout the United States, and then what I did was take the data and extract from that all the respondents from the state of Mississippi. The way the data was, the framing of the sampling of the data and everything was done by the U.S. Census Bureau to verify it, and it was a valid sample from the state of Mississippi. And when it was weighted, this was at the end of 2021, when it was weighted, it indicated that there was 42,844 licensed nurses in the state of Mississippi. It also included nurse practitioners or advanced practice. So the good thing about that is there was enough samples done in the state of Mississippi to be able to weight the data. And then I provided, Dr. Burks provided me with, they reviewed the survey and they extracted, I think, about 88 questions from the survey. And those are contained in the leaflet type pamphlets. And if you have any questions about any of the responses in there and the results, I'll be glad to talk to anybody about that. And on the handout for the PowerPoint, on the last page in there is my contact information where you can talk to me. The nurses that received degrees, RN degrees in the state of Mississippi, they had, we looked at it from 2013 through 2020, and there were different areas of increases and decreases. So from an educational standpoint, the survey kind of gives you an idea of where the graduates are coming from. If you look at how nurses paid for their education, 55% was self-pay. 45.7% used federal funds. Other type of student loans were 15%, and non-government scholarship was 14.5%. So the survey tells you all the different ways that money was borrowed or used to support their education. I find it somewhat interesting. 41% borrowed up to $30,000. 32% reported they did not borrow any money. And 26% said they borrowed between $30,000 and $90,000. Their nursing education. Over 90% of Mississippi participants agreed to practice to the full extent of their state's legal scope of practice. Over 80% of the Mississippi participants agreed that they were able to practice to the full extent. If you look at the employment part of the survey, the majority of course, the majority of everybody was in health-related direct care to patients. and asks what educational benefits does the employee offer to help support the nurse. 55.5% said none. Tuition reimbursement was 27%. And a flexible scheduling was 20.4%. Over 80% responded that they were satisfied with their nursing position. But this is kind of contradictory, but 83.7% said they did experience burnout.
Did or did not?
Experience burnout.
Is that on a slide?
Yeah, I'm going to give you out
Uh-huh.
copies of the slideshow itself.
Oh.
With Dr. Smith, we talked about for this 88 questions. Actually, there's 100 and something questions. So getting into specifics, we'd be here all day with you. So this presentation gives you some of the specific examples that we looked at, about 10 of them. The 88, it's almost overwhelming if you try to go through that. So, we give you a minute as he's talking to you, for you to kind of glance through these slides and if you have specific questions about that. We sit here for 2 or 3 days just going through the questions, saying it's overwhelming. So, we weren't sure what specifically that you might want to talk about. So I asked Dr. Smith just to do a very, very high level of what's included in here, what's it about. And I'm sure you're going to have specific areas that you have interest in. We'd be glad to provide you that information. Primarily, go back to your very first slide, Larry, on the, right here, the one that she pulls up. And we'll try to go with this. Go back to the first chart, if you don't mind.
The first chart.
One. No, back over.
I think I was following him, but
Right
the
here.
slides were behind. There you
Yeah,
go.
that's fine. We'll start here and let's go through these slides up here. And again, we did have the conversation about going through specific slides, but it's almost overwhelming to do that. So we'll go through these and just see if you have some specific questions about this. This is the makeup of the questionnaire.
When the survey was weighted and everything, the results said that we had 42,844 total licensed RN in the state of Mississippi at the end of December of 2021. Now, whether that matches up exactly with the statistics that the Board of Nursing has or not, probably it's not exact, but this is what happened as far as the survey is concerned and how it was weighted.
So before we go, because I need to understand that. So I mean, I understand the weighting, but do you have the raw number of how many RNs in Mississippi actually participated?
I think it was around 2,000 to 3,000.
2,000 to 3,000?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
And they had this survey, he has access to survey data information for other states too. And what he did, and that's what kind of unique, is he pulled it out for Mississippi to present to you, to this board.
See, I extracted it for Mississippi, then I went through each individual question and did an analysis using the, standard statistical procedures.
So with this slide, kind of tell them.
And this slide shows a different variation of how the RN degrees were received from 2000 to 2020. And you can see we have peaks and valleys there. And there may be some ways to explain some of those peaks, but it just is, as it shows, there is variation in the number of degrees received. And this one just shows how the participants use different money to pay for their degree. And
Yeah, go back. So that's what he was talking about, where they got their money, received their money to get their education. You guys may have known this, but it was a little surprising to us, the self-pay percentage for that degree. That's a pretty stout number. And it just tells you by category. The next one, please.
this shows, that some people borrowed quite a bit of money to get their education in the field of nursing. 26%, borrowed up to $90,000.
This was, and one question that we had is the amount of time the actual nurses that spend in bedside practice, and this was addressing that issue.
So that cost estimate, that's for all the degrees.
Right, it did
Yeah.
break out by nurses and. nurse
So
practitioners.
we're looking at community colleges, senior colleges, 5-year programs. Okay, that makes sense.
The trouble with it, with a national survey like this,
Yeah.
it's difficult to get down in the extreme details.
Right.
And the requests come from all categories. They don't break it out by category.
Okay.
But again, these are just samples of that big folder that you have of those things. And these were just things we said to give you an example of what I was looking at.
This particular slide just tells you when someone works up to 100 hours, how those hours are distributed among different type of categories, where it's patient care, research, teaching.
Where they spent their time and where they estimated they spent their time during their job. So this kind of gives a breakdown of the respondents. This one is.
It just shows how the different areas, and so about 85% of those participants were concentrating in patient care.
Special development is the amount that their employer contributed to them while they were working there. Again, we don't know what the standard would be, but that's what their response was.
Over 80% responded that they were satisfied, they were working in a nursing position. And then, but then the flip side of that, of those, they were satisfied, but they also experienced burnout.
Why they left? This is
They burn out, better paying jobs, inadequate staffing, lack of good management, and physical demands of the job. Those were the 5 main categories of why people left nursing. (64.8% said they were going to retire up to 5 years from now. More than 5 years, 47%. 18% not sure. 1 to 2 years, 9.6%.
that's a pretty significant drain on the nursing population.
But 64.8% of that 2,000 said they would be retiring in the project.
That's what the survey says. And this one has remained in the primary nursing position. 19.2% in 1 to 3 years from now. More than 3 years with 14.9%. And the reasons given for what would contribute to them leaving, the top 2, better pay and then burnout. (67% of Mississippi participants replied that they would be retiring 5 years from now. And so this slide tells you that, you know, the dynamics of the workforce is changing. The reason they're not working in a primary nursing position for pay is, we've been talking, retirement is number 1 and number 2 is burnout. 38% said the Mississippi participants stated they had no future intention to work for pay in nursing.
We know it's really high level, and just a snapshot. Once you get to that big folder, I'm sure you have a lot more questions. The detail behind it, the reasoning behind it, we don't have the answer. We can just tell you what the survey does. We do have questions about what another state looks like, with the national average and things. We give Dr. Smith, I think, run those numbers in a few days and get that back.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you for this. Explain to me the relationship between these two. Are these Is this the same
It's the
database?
same data. The thick one is the 80-something questions that were kind of the emphasis of your staff. And those are just some examples to show you what's in there.
Okay, this is,
One of the same.
okay, all the same. We're not talking about.
Like one of them, the actual survey.
Yeah,
There's
the
a-
other document that I gave you is the actual survey itself.
Yeah.
Let you know what all-
I understand. That's a detailed question, but
But the other one you just asked about is Dr. Burks and her staff submitted about 80 some questions to us to do more detail.
And the other questions in the survey, if you do have specific questions about that, you can mention.
one other question. I'm not familiar with the organization. How are you all funded?
We're funded by the foundation, so we don't solicit money from individuals. We're a nonprofit. And again, we do work with the legislature. We had helped provide testimony at a hearing last year for the Medicaid expansion. We just provided that information. We're working actually assigned to the legislative task force for early intervention right now. We do work with the Department of Health on their hospital discharge data and information like that. But we go across government helping stuff. We do not take a position or anything related to an item or what needs to be done. And if you look on our website, we probably have 300-400 briefs where we've written about stuff tobacco use in the state, resulted of the ability to provide that and information like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
At this time, we're gonna ask Dr. Burks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Dr. Burks will also follow up with that, wrapping up the Office of Nursing Workforce and then lead into our practical nursing education.
Correct. Good morning. First, I would like to start by introducing the Office of Nursing Workforce staff. We've hired some great, wonderful individuals for that department. First is Ms. Leslie Seaton. She is now the ONW director. We have Ms. Shirley Pandolfi. She's our program supervisor. Data guru. And we also have Ms. Shakita Carter. She is not new, but she is now new to ONW. She is the project manager. And we're excited and elated to have these ladies on board. So in the future, expect some exciting, breathtaking, and some new things. First, I'll start with the ONW School Nurse Retention Scholarship. As you all know, the retention scholarships was awarded to individuals throughout the state, and those individuals have a work service agreement with us. 19 of those participants have graduated from their nursing programs. We have 4 that's scheduled to graduate in December. 1 is scheduled to graduate in May, and 7 of those recipients have completed their service work agreement. In terms of the ONW nursing program scholarships, the checks, we received those from DFA and they've been mailed to the nursing program. Mississippi State University check is still pending because we're waiting on the arrival from DFA. Jones and Northwest checks, they were mailed, but still we're waiting on their arrival to the schools. The total for those checks was $860,000. We had 25 schools participating throughout the state, and that consisted of practical nursing programs, associate degree, the registered nursing programs, both at the community college and university level, as well as the advanced degrees, master's and doctoral programs. In addition to the program scholarships, there is a scholarship recipient form and a scholarship accountability form for the fall distribution. The deadline is December the 2nd, and the spring and summer is April 1st, 2025. So in December, we'll have a more detailed report of that funding, and hopefully the schools will start sending in those forms with their scholarship recipients. The ONW newsletter, the date for the 2nd edition distribution is October the 30th. And we're going to focus on the nursing program scholarship recipients. We're also going to have additional information. So if you all know of anything that's going on that you would like for us to spotlight and highlight, please submit that information to us and we will place it in the ONW newsletter. For MMVP, we currently have 33 three participants that are being monitored. One participant is scheduled for graduation October. It's actually October the 10th. And we have two pending participants, one in treatment and one potential transfer from another state. In terms of community participation, we've attended the deans and directors on September the 13th. We also met with Dr. Rebecca Cockrell at the Balance Foundation, September the 6th. And we will be participating in the M&A conference, October 2024. That is the end of the ONW report. Are there any questions regarding that report?
Any questions for Dr. Burks? Thank you. So Dr. Burks, if you will, go ahead and give us the report on the practical nursing education.
For practical nursing education, I do have two items to bring forward. And these are in regard to the site visits. We're currently in the accreditation phase for the practical nursing programs at the community college. The first report that I will review for you in summary is with Meridian Community College. There is a detailed report that is attached, but I'll just review the summary. In regards to the summary, we did a site visit to Meridian Community College Practical Nursing Program. The program was reviewed in accordance with the Mississippi Board of Nursing Administrative Code 2865 Practical Nursing State Accreditation Standards. The self-study evaluation, it was done, and that is an internal practical nursing assessment conducted by the staff, faculty, students, and administration of the college. The accreditation review consists of an evaluation of 6 accreditation standards. They included governance, faculty, staff, students, curriculum, resources, and outcome. The accreditation review can result in 3 types of accreditation status, one being full accreditation, provisional accreditation, probationary, and the final could be withdrawal of the accreditation. In regard to Meridian Community College, their recommendation for accreditation, their review was September the 10th through the 13th. Their program findings, the Meridian Community College Practical Nursing Program was compliant with all standards and criteria, thus not requiring submission of a corrective action plan. It is recommended Meridian's Practical Nursing Program receive full accreditation with the following recommendation. Discuss the roles and responsibility of the Mississippi Board of Nursing and the Mississippi College Board during faculty meetings with faculty as it relates to the practical nursing programs. While regulatory authority of the practical nursing program rests with the Mississippi Board of Nursing, oversight of the curriculum is under the purview of the Mississippi Community College Board. With full accreditation status, the next review of the Meridian Community College Practical Nursing Program will occur in 2032. The recommendation is that they receive full accreditation. For the second one, do you want me to go to both?
Yeah. So with that being said, is there a motion on the floor to accept Dr. Priscilla Burks?
Are we voting on the approval for MCC? Are we?
To vote on the Meridian Community
Right,
College.
Meridian Community
accreditation.
College.
Yes, the accreditation.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve their full accreditation renewal as recommended by Dr. Burks.
A second.
All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now, Dr. Burks, you can move forward.
Okay. The second one is Northeast Mississippi Community College, their site visit report. And again, the program was reviewed in accordance with the Mississippi Board of Nursing Administrative Code Part 2865, the Practical Nursing State Accreditation Standards. The accreditation review consisted of an evaluation of governance, faculty and staff, students, curriculum, resources, and outcomes. The accreditation review can result in full accreditation, provisional, probationary, or complete withdrawal of accreditation. Northeast Mississippi Community College, the date of the review was September 24th and 25th. The program findings. The Northeast Mississippi Community College Practical Nursing Program was compliant with all standards and criteria, thus not requiring submission of a corrective action plan. Therefore, a full accreditation for the program with the following recommendations. In terms of governance, which is Rule 3.2, Criteria 2, include in future discussions regarding policies, differences, and document those differences in their faculty meeting minutes. With Rule 3.3, Criteria 2 and 4, faculty pursue additional professional development that enhances evidence-based practice in both the classroom and clinical setting. Their organizational structure, that their class clinical roles be organized and labeled appropriately to clearly reflect the students enrolled in the program and their respective instructors. In Rule 3.4, students, the program enhanced communication about various funding opportunities available to students. Provide opportunities for financial aid to speak to students about scholarships, grants, and foundational funding. Also reorganize the online content so that essential information such as admissions criteria, application details, rating scales, handbooks can be consolidated on a single web page in an effort to increase accessibility, thereby enhancing the user's experience. Minimize the use of student representatives for issues or grievances specific to students. This approach aims to prevent placing them in potentially challenging situations and to reduce the risk of verbal violations. For Rule 3.5, curriculum, organize the calendar hours in a more consistent and coherent manner, ensuring they align with the specified requirements outlined in the Mississippi curriculum, and maintain a roster reflecting affiliation expiration dates, as well as label agreements as current or previously. And their Rule 3.7 outcome, Criteria 1, provide detailed explanation of the actions and strategies to address and changes in program outcomes. Address the occurrence of trends in the SPE, as well as discuss and document actions in the faculty meeting minutes. The recommendation is full accreditation status with delineated recommendations. The next review of Northeast Community College Practical Nursing Program will occur in 2013. So the recommendation would be full accreditation with the delineated recommendations.
So with that being said, this would be the second thing to come from Dr. Burks. So is there a motion on the floor to accept her recommendation?
I'm motion to accept.
So I have a motion. All those in favor?
I have a quick
I'm
question.
sorry, let me have some discussion.
Just
Go
quick.
ahead.
So, and you may have said this, but so will they give you this, like an on those suggestions that you made for the like
Yes,
the
ma'am.
website update and all that?
Mhm.
Okay.
That will be done because they have to present or submit an annual report.
Okay.
So that information we reflect as part of the annual
Okay,
report.
that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We will move forward, and Dr. Burks, you can go forward with the rest of your report.
We also have some upcoming site visits. Kahoma Community College is October the 16th through the 18th, and Itawamba is October the 21st through the 23rd. Community participation, we did orientation for Singing River with Mr. Christopher Kelly in regards to the IV therapy course. We had a mentoring meeting with a new ADN faculty at Copiah Lincoln Community College. I attended the JNR editorial board meeting in August, attended the NCSBN virtual NCLEX conference, attended the WIOA meeting in Hattiesburg, did the NCLEX review with the student graduate September the 18th, attended deans and directors. Upcoming events will be the M&A conference, USM student presentation on October the 15th, and Northwest Community College Practical Nursing Advisory Meeting October the 16th. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Burks. Do we have any questions for Dr. Burks?
I just want to say I'm grateful for your leadership, standing in the O&W gap over the last little bit. It's noted and appreciated all the hats you wear at the Mississippi Board of Nursing, Dr. Burks. We are grateful for you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Burks. All right, at this time, we're going to move forward to Dr. Johnson with the Executive Director's report.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present a brief report today. The report aims to provide you with important updates on nursing regulations, licensure data, disciplinary and investigation numbers, and other pertinent board information. As always, the mission, we are a consumer protection agency with the authority to regulate the practice of nursing through licensure as provided for by the Mississippi State Code. Some highlights that I want to bring to your attention. The MEC Hobnob 2024 will be October 21st, 2024. Please contact Shan Montgomery if you're interested in attending that event. The NCSBN mid-year meeting is March 11th through the 13th, 2025. It will be held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So save the date for that. The Leadership in Public Policy Conference is October 9th through the 11th in Charlottesville, Virginia. Those that are attending should already have that information and accommodations confirmed. I did want to bring to your attention that the International Center for Regulatory Scholarship, better known as ICRS, will be running a pilot course called Practicing with Intention, Professional Decision-Making for Nurses. The course was developed with the intention of reimagining discipline for nurses and the nurse regulatory boards who issue disciplinary actions. Nurses will explore the various factors that influence their ability to make sound, professional, ethical decisions. There are 5 states that have thus far signed up, and that was the cutoff to participate in this pilot program. We have been put as number 1 on the waiting list in case someone drops out, but this will be based on what the results are, the outcomes are of the pilot. Then you will be able to use this for nurses that undergo disciplinary action, and it will be an ethics and sound decision-making type course. So I look forward to more from that. The Operation Nightingale is ongoing. I am happy to report that there is nothing to report for the state of Mississippi in Operation Nightingale right now. Schools are still being investigated, however, and new ones are appearing each and every day. The renewal cycle for RNs began, well, let me back up. I do want to say with the board visibility, you've heard Dr. Burks, and I do want to make sure that I give accolades to my staff. I have a great staff and they do a great job. I cannot do what I do without them. And so they do a tremendous job. They're visible out in the community. You see the updates and you see where I have the board visibility because we're not just sitting in the office. When the schools call or when our stakeholders call, my staff are competent, they're efficient, and they're effective. And they love to go out and talk about regulation because that's what we do to try to prevent nurses from being up here in front of you doing this past week. So we have an educational component that we definitely stress. We like to be out in the community and the community does recognize that. So you'll see some of the things that they've attended. This is not all, this is a snapshot, but I do want to give accolades to Dr. Stewart and the Mississippi State University Accelerated Nursing Program is what I call it. But I was invited to the white coat ceremony that they had, and it was great. Great job. Dr. Stewart gave a great speech. Didn't know she could speak like that. Great speech. And I think you all had 35, is that right? 35 in the inaugural program, which was a large number for me in the inaugural program. But the students were excited. They got their cowbells and their white coats and they're out in the clinical world. They are extremely excited. So I just wanted to thank you for the invite. And I did take some pictures. I don't know where they are, but I did send them to Shan.
Thanks for being there.
Yeah. No, that is not true. That is not true. Moving on, the renewal. Moving on, the renewal cycle for RNs began September the 1st in 2020, September the 1st of this year. As of the data that I looked at yesterday, I believe, or this morning, we have 54,649 RNs. So it's a little bit different than that because that was done last week. And you know, we turn over every night. We upload data. So we have a little bit more than that. We have 13,845 LPNs and 8,884 total APRNs. Our investigations report reflects our August and September data. Keep going, that's our hearing matters right here. The investigations report reflects the August and September data. The number of investigations was 433. The cases referred to legal were 14, and you'll see that the fingerprints that were mailed out were 162 and the on-site fingerprints were 226. And when the students come and visit, they usually get their fingerprints done here during the hearing week. So kudos to our investigations division. We have a nurse investigator that we've hired. I'm not sure if she's in the room. Is Dwayne, he's not in here? Ms. Gwen Carsey. is new to the investigative division. She brings a wealth of experience in the investigative and legal arena, and we are excited about having Ms. Causey on board here at the Board of Nursing. So that looks good. Staffing is picking up in some areas. Regulatory updates, if you move on to the next slide, Shan, I've already talked about that one, I think. The Administrative Code Committee met since the last meeting, and when you look at this just shows that pending is gratuitous nursing is still pending, and the use of diet medication, and you heard some comments in the open forum dealing with that rule 1.5. The Administrative Code Committee will be looking, moving forward and looking at that rule as well as other rules. And there was, they made decisions on part 2825, the appeal, the monitor practice hours, 2840, and the public records policy. And these are the ones that were previously approved, and I just put them up there for your information that went into effect in July. Other business that I wanted to speak briefly on, the board educational workshop is November 13th, 2024. That will be held here at the board. And the board retreat date, I've discussed with Madam President and looking at the first week of May for dates to convene the retreat, because you know, we normally used to have it in January. The ice storms occur in January, and the last time the board met, they said we would like to look at changing that. So I am looking at the first week of May. More to come on that, but I'm looking at the May 6th, 7th, and 8th are the dates that I'm looking at right now. But once we confirm something, that information will be sent out. And Madam President, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any questions for Dr. Johnson? All right, moving forward. Next is board business. Do we have a motion for the approval of the business meeting minutes for July 19?
Make a motion.
Second. All those in favor? Okay, next thing is request for a motion for the approval of the hearing panel minutes from June 2024 and July 2024. They took right. Charlie Walker. All those in favor? Okay. Next is request for approval of agreed settlement proposal minutes, June 2024 and July 2024. Have a motion.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the next thing on the agenda for meeting dates for administrative hearings and settlements, we have December 3rd, 4th, 5th of 2024 at 8:30 a.m. The business meeting will take place on December 6th, 2024 at 11:05 a.m. And the hearing panel will be Nancy Norris Johnson, Carly Walker, Janie Clinton, and there is a spot that's open. So if we have someone that is available to sit for December, please get with myself or Dr. Johnson so that we can fill that spot. Any questions? Or no one? Okay. So next we're going to go to the committee reports. So moving on to committee reports, in the executive committee, the only thing we have coming out of it is for a motion for the approval of ratification of the administrative denial for case number 2024-0255. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And so that is currently all the business coming out of the executive committee. Next, we have the compliance committee. Ms. Johnson, do you have anything coming out of your committee? Okay.
Okay, I move that the board adopts for the compliance committee recommendations that we accept one compliant affidavits 2. We accept one compliant affidavit 1. We deny the extension request for R868809 for education courses. We accept the recommendation to add addendum to R888376 and R8023356 to extend their probation. We accepted the modification to the final board order for R 860986 to take the provision to allow further work with two employers. We accept the modification to final order R 874066 to reduce the probation from 48 months to 36 months. And last, we accepted a new criteria regarding the board approved assessors.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So would anyone like to make a motion to accept that?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Anything else, Ms. Johnson? All right, next, we're gonna move forward with the Advanced Practice Committee. Dr. Stewart, you have anything coming out? Thank you, Dr. Stewart.
We're working.
But I believe it. I heard great things. So
Not working like Nancy, she says, which is probably true.
So with that being said, thank you, Dr. Stewart. So next is the Practice Committee. So Ms. Clanton, do you have anything?
We don't have anything to know right now.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Administrative Code Committee. Ms. Gentry?
The Administrative Code Committee met in September. And we make a motion, I'll take these one at a time, a request for the approval of the proposed amendment to 30 Mississippi Administrative Code, Part 2825, Rule 1.9.
So I have a motion on the floor. Would anybody like to second it?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this?
Can you, do we have that in here, or can you explain what that is?
Yes, actually, Dr. Johnson spoke about it in her report. And I will debrief you in one moment as soon as I get to that page, please, sir. All right, so that particular 2825, and Mr. Walker can probably speak to this much better than I can. But 2825 was the appeal of board hearing panel, the full membership of the board. Mr. Walker, if you'll explain that in layman's terms, please, sir.
Can y'all hear me? Essentially, the process is right now, the appeal process is what y'all have this afternoon. Briefs are filed. There's a time period on that, 60 days, where they file a brief, then we file a brief. There's a whole process. So what the changes are that the committee voted on, because that's not done. We've spoken with the AG's office. That process is not done anywhere. And it's essentially created a bottleneck. It's holding up. Now discipline goes into effect immediately because the rules will change. So when discipline's ordered and they appeal, it's in effect. They're responsible for it. That process now is delaying that. And so the changes would remove the whole oral argument phase from it. There would still be appeal. They'd file a notice of appeal within the time period. It would come straight to the board as y'all sit now, and y'all would have the full record as it is. And y'all could review the record and make a decision based on that instead of having the whole, it literally, y'all, it can delay it up to a year, is what happens. And so, and that's realistic. And some are in chancery right now. And so that's the process is to speed up what is already in place. And like I said, we've spoken with AG's office. This is one of two boards that does it that way. There's nothing, it's not going against statute. We're well within the rules to do that and amend the process. It's to speed it up. I think it would help the licensees quicker, a lot more than it would now. So that's the reason that's it.
Any further questions? Okay, we had our motion, our second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So, Ms. Gentry, what was your second?
Okay, so the second, I make a motion that the board adopt the request for approval of public records policy as 30 Mississippi Administrative Code, Part 2880, Chapter 2, and that's, well, public records policy. So,
Yeah.
as well.
Let me make a motion first.
Yeah, I need to get my second
Okay.
on that. So do we have a second? All right, any discussion?
That's literally just to add, if y'all are familiar, 2880, that's where all our fees are at. This is to implement a public records policy that was not in place right now, and that's to get that going as soon as possible. And there'll probably be another amendment to 2880 at some point to adjust for fees. But that's all it is implementing the public records policy and putting it in 2880.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Ms. Gentry. Great work. Next is the Finance Committee, and Ms. Montgomery is stepping in for Mr. Cummings. You cannot be.
Good afternoon, everyone. You have two budget documents in your packet. You have a legislative budget request document and the budget narrative. The focus of this budget packet is on our fiscal year 26 request to the Legislative Budget Office, specifically the increases over last year's budgets. We have a starting cash balance of $6,327,857. I always like to give that number first. The first increase that we're requesting in this fiscal year 26 budget is in salary and wages. In the budget narrative, we discussed the board has experienced significant turnover, primarily due to competitive salary opportunities, both private sector and the state sector. So to address this issue, we continue to ask for that 5 to 10% increase from the Legislative Budget Office to appropriate to the staff. That total came to $94,600. The second increase is in subsidy loans and grants, which we are requesting an additional $500,000. Of course, we heard the excellent report given by Dr. Burks this morning highlighting the scholarships. And we do have the $500,000 is within our funding. And it's not impacting day-to-day operations funding. Can't read my notes. Of course, it's immediate impact for the nursing students and the long-term impact on returning nurses in Mississippi. So in closing, we're requesting $8,041,777. Additionally, I've attached a 5-year comparison of revenue to expenses. This chart reflects that the board is able to generate the funding to meet our fiscal year 26 requests. I yield to any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Montgomery? We have a motion to accept the finance report.
Make a motion to accept.
Second. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. And next, we have the Office of Nursing Workforce. Ms. Clinton, do you have anything from the Office of Nursing Workforce?
We have a meeting second.
Thank you, Ms. Clinton. The last thing we need to cover under other business is to see if we could get a motion as the NCSBN mid-year meeting will be at the same time that we had discussed doing an ASP date, which is March 11th. And so we want to have the discussion of canceling the March 11th ASP date and moving it on to adding it to the panel week in April, where it'll be April 7th. 2024 added to that panel date versus the March 11th that would interfere with mid-year meeting. Would anyone like to make that motion to move the March 11th ASP date to Monday, April 7th, 2024 during the hearing panel?
Move to approve.
So you make the motion?
Yes.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any other business today? All right, with that being said, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? And here it is. And today we have the full membership with the exception of those that are recused. So at this time, I'd like to do a roll call to confirm our quorum, starting to my left.
Alvino Castillo.
Carly Walker.
Drew Calhoun.
Lacey Gentry.
Sandra Culpepper.
Janie Clanton.
Mary Stewart.
Beverly Oliver.
At this time, I would like to turn over to Ms. O'Neill.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen O'Neill. I am, have been assigned by the Attorney General's office to the hearing officer today. And as I understand it, we are here today in the matter of an appeal from the board panel to the full board of Crystal Lynn Harbor. As I understand it, Mr. Doug Mercier is here representing Ms. Harbor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is she here?
She is not present.
She's not present, okay. According to the procedures of the nursing board, as I stated, Ms. Harbor already had some action taken against her license by the board panel and then moved the board panel to lift some restrictions or to reinstate her full license. And the board then instituted some additional discipline, and now we're here for the appeal of that to the full board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what do we have first today? How are we going to proceed then, Mr. Walker?
Well, Your Honor, this one's a little different because we've entered into an agreed motion to amend the final order. And then I believe y'all have the folder in front of you. Mr. Mercier has briefed it, but we have the final order that was originally issued. And then we have an proposed amended final order that you'll see in there. That we present along with our agreed motion to amend the final order. And I'll let Mr. Mercier speak to anything he wants to speak to.
Well, I think that what Mr. Walker is saying is true. This is unusual. It's not the way it's normally done. There was an order that was entered, and the order in paragraph 5 did some things that normally aren't done. It actually imposed additional restrictions on Ms. Harbor. They found that she had met her burden of compliance with the prior order, but they went farther in paragraph 5 and decided to actually add some more restrictions, but there was no complaint before the board. There was no motion to amend it. There was no notice. It was unusual because the board found that the restrictions should be removed, but then for some reason they said, well, we want to do this. And there was actually no evidence put on for that from our side. We had no notice of it. He didn't. So discussing it with Mr. Walker, we both discussed the issues of law and both came to the same conclusion that the original order probably would be overturned on appeal because it was not legally sound.
Exactly, May 15th order that I'm looking at here that says final.
It's the May 15th.
Okay, that's the one that we're appealing from, and okay.
Mr. Walker,
No, I mean, what Doug says is pretty spot on. Additional stipulations were put on after her petition was granted, so that's why we're here with the amended.
The amended final order here that's before.
Yes, Your Honor, and the agreed motion to amend.
Yeah, but the amended final order does not look like, it doesn't have a place to sign on it yet. Is that?
Well, we printed, we didn't know who all would be on the panel, so there are signature pages that are.
So, to summarize it, if I may, procedurally, just so I can make sure that the board understands it and that I understand what we're saying, is that when she came before the board panel to have her license reinstated after having complied with some restrictions or stipulations, the board said that the board panel found that she had complied, but then also imposed additional restrictions without a hearing having been, okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so, and this agreed motion to amend and this amended final order would be sufficient then, Mr. Mercier, y'all are okay? Your client is all right with entering in this amended final order?
right, and just to kind of summarize it provides that my client would submit us to an evaluation of chemical dependency, substance abuse, and including a psychiatric, psychological evaluation as well. So that allows the board to know that they're safe, that the original removal stipulations was correct. So if there is a problem, she's agreed to comply with whatever, the evaluator said.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
that right, Brent?
Yeah, it's still got the amended final order that's proposed. Still has the evaluations in there, and then she would have to abide by those evaluations. If there's anything deemed,
All right, so this basically takes the place of the appeal then and would dismiss the appeal. So there's no need for oral argument.
That's correct.
yeah, that's correct.
Well, at this time, the board may have questions for either of the attorneys, or are y'all ready to go in executive session to discuss accepting this, or I'll leave it to y'all.
Does anyone
I
have
have,
any?
I have just a question. So how did these additional stipulations end up in the final order? Was that just inadvertent and Scrivener's error on our part, or what happened?
She petitioned the board and came for her hearing to get the stipulations removed.
Yeah.
They were granted, and at the same time, they granted it and then put additional stipulations on top of it when there was nothing brought forward against it. The board didn't charge her, send us her notice to come in for,
I was just trying to figure out how they got in there if we didn't.
at her petition to remove those stipulations. They were granted, the petition was granted. But they also imposed additional restrictions that went beyond what she originally had to begin with.
Sounds like the board panel, and I'm just guessing, went back into executive session, trying to decide whether or not she complied and to lift the restrictions, and said, yes, we think she's complied with everything we asked her so far, but we want her to do some more things. It sounds like that's what the board panel
Yes.
basically.
Okay, there have been no evidence on that, no hearing. Okay.
Any other questions?
Was it a recommendation by the panel?
It was entered into as a final order of this is what she was gonna have to do, and it extended her period of time.
Oh.
Yeah, it was granted and then added additional time along with more stipulations.
So I'm just trying to determine so the action that was taken by the board was not the board's intent to do what was reflected?
We don't know because that panel is not, they're recused. So we don't know what their intentions were.
But the board had not previously acted on that. Or had they?
I don't really know what you're
I
asking.
think Mr. Castillo is what you're asking is, she had already completed everything she needed to, from what I'm understanding, she completed all the requirements to come back to have her stipulations removed. But when they decided to lift those stipulations, they added on more restrictions. But they didn't have charges or a case against her to be able to add those things on to.
She had maybe it'll help. She had a final order simpler what's in here for a time period. She complied with that. Came in to get those restrictions were lifted. The hearing was had. They granted the petition.
So if those additional restrictions are to be added, we'd have to have a new process. Start over.
She would have had to have been charged and have a notice sent out against, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I make a motion, we go into closed session.
Okay, so I have a motion from Ms. Gentry that we go into closed session.
Motion.
So I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Good afternoon. The board has come back out of executive session. We voted in executive session to come out of executive session, so we are now out of executive session. The board made a decision in this matter to accept the proposed agreed order. So, and it has been signed by all of 8 members on the board, so. Is there anything further that needs to be?
Are you sure you don't want all 4
I know you work so hard. No, I will pass. Maybe next time. Okay, if there's nothing further to come before this board, then I guess we can motion to adjourn, because that's your.
I second that motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Have a great weekend, y'all.